decide. So thank you very much for your contributions to this debate. The European Union can do this. The Republic of Moldova can do this as well, and both of us want to do this. This brings us on to the next item on our agenda, the situation in Colombia. So now on our agenda we have a statement by the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Ms. Kaja Kallas, on the situation in Colombia after the wave of recent terrorist attacks.
And then I invite you, Ms. Kallas, to open the discussion.
Dear President, honourable members of the European Parliament, since I addressed you in June in this topic, we learned with great sadness of Senator Miguel Uribe Turbey's murder, and we have witnessed new deadly attacks against the civilian population and the security forces of Colombia. I will meet with Colombia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yolanda Villavicencio, in 2 weeks' time, and I will convey our condemnation of these despicable actions. I want to also reiterate our deepest condolences to the families of the victims and their loved ones, and I want to pay a special tribute to the 13 police officers killed on the 21st of August in the line of duty. Those responsible must be swiftly brought to justice, and I welcome the commitment of the Colombian government in this regard. The European Union will keep doing what it can to support the brave men and women of the Colombian security forces, including by providing training, facilitating the sharing of best practices, and promoting police and judicial cooperation in the pursuit of criminals and terrorists. Colombia's active participation in EU-funded programs and its close cooperations with agencies like Europol and the European Drugs Agency is of enormous value. This is not only important for the security of Colombians, but also for Europe. Likewise, the joint work we conduct in law enforcement, maritime safety and criminal justice, to name just few areas, contributes to our joint security. We will continue to work together to combat the organised crime and drug trafficking that brings corruption to our institutions and violence to our streets. The European Union is committed to supporting the Colombian government in pursuit of peace. Peace will always be the best guarantee for long-term security for all Colombian citizens. Current challenges should not obscure the historic progress achieved since the demobilization of the FRC. The European Union will continue to support Colombia in the implementation of the 2016 peace agreement, the provision of transitional justice, and in all efforts to negotiate peace and bring socio-economic development to its territories and communities. The success of the Colombian peace process remains a key priority for the European Union. Finally, as Colombia prepares to hold general elections in 2026, it is especially important to guarantee a safe and conducive political environment free from threats and interference. We call upon all political actors, candidates and media to do their part, including in rejecting political polarization and hate speech, and uniting in defense of Colombia's democratic institutions. As always, the European Union stands ready to do what it can to support these efforts, including by deploying electoral observation mission upon invitation by the relevant authorities. Honourable members, the pursuit of peace, the fight against organised crime and protection of democracy in Colombia are strands that pull Colombia in the same positive direction. And as Colombia enters a delicate pre-electoral period and faces important security challenges, I reiterate the European Union's continued commitment to do its part in the pursuit of our shared objectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Urmează Gabriel Mato din partea.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel Mato for the EPP.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Dear Vice President,
Well, it's not usual for us to speak of Colombia in this plenary, but unfortunately we're doing it because of the difficulties being faced by a country that's a friend. Violence has become a daily thing in many parts of the country, and organised crime has taken over from the shadow of a conflict which doesn't seem to ever end. Well, we saw Miguel Uribe Turbay, who was a pre-candidate, murdered. That's not isolated. In Florencia, Cali, there's violence against people defending human rights, politicians, journalists, is growing and bringing into question not only electoral guarantees, but also trust in institutions. And we call on the institutions to investigate these facts and persecute those behind it, because in the face of violence, we can't hold back. Hate speech as well is driving polarization and political violence, creating a huge level of instability in the country, instability which is also fed because the Maduro regime has allowed, together with the narcos, has allowed dissidents from the FARC, the ERN, to step in and spread fear in Colombia. For this, President, the time has come now for them to be declared as terrorist organizations, these people who have split off from FARC. And we call that those people who are doing so much to put an end to the peace of a friendly country should be persecuted. In the face of organized crime and violence, Colombia requires all our support. And the resolution we've presented goes in that direction. No more violence. Thank you.
Urmează Robert Biedrun din partea grupului Alianței Socialiste.
Thank you very much, our great President, High Commissioner, High Representative, colleagues. When the Colombian peace agreement was signed in 2016, it brought an end to the half a century of terrible violence and destruction. It was a remarkable achievement. The situation ahead of the upcoming presidential elections is already very tense and polarized. What this House should do is to offer our condolences to the families of murdered Senator Miguel Uribe Turbay and other victims of violence. But what we need to do also is to support the Colombian authorities in their efforts to bring the perpetrators to justice, fight against criminal organizations, and to build a real, sustainable and just peace. The EU has to play a constructive role in Colombia, and I want to thank High Representative for her words on that. The people of Colombia should not be paying the price for these Parliament's political tricky games on the situation in Colombia. What we should do is to focus on how to bring peace and stability instead of accusations and allegations. And I call to all my colleagues from different political groups to do so. Thank you very much.
Dziękujemy. Urmează Fabrice Leggeri din partea grupului.
Next speaker is Fabrice Leggeri for the Patriots.
À Bogota,
In Bogota, there are attacks, terrorist attacks striking against innocent civilians, armed groups carrying these out thanks to drugs trafficking, and it's the rule of the clans which is now being imposed, the rule of fear and violence. We shouldn't kid ourselves. This isn't just in Latin America. In Marseille, in 2023, 47 people were killed in narco-traffic school settling, which is a historic record. And this is a criminal activity that generates billions of euros. In Antwerp, the main port of entry of cocaine in Europe, there are tons that go through every year that are undermining our societies and our institutions and threaten the security and safety of our citizens. This is part of the same chain of insecurity, if you like, from Colombia to our European cities. Colombia is a power that has to overcome this terrorism and trafficking. And we need to see Colombia re-establish its order in its own territory. The European Union cannot just come up with verbal condemnations. It has to strengthen police and judicial cooperation turn off the tap of criminal financing and protect our borders. Closing our eyes to the link between terrorism and drugs trafficking is accepting that that violence will invariably come to us. We have to be firm on this. Any renouncement of that would be wrong. Any delay in doing this would constitute a danger to our people. Thank you, President. Thank you, High Representative. Thank you. Now, Mr. Carlo Fidanza for the ECR.
Thank you very much indeed, President, High Representative, colleagues. Last August, Miguel Uribe Turbay, who was a candidate for the Conservatives in the next presidential election, died following the attack on the 7th of June. And, people are responsible because they didn't strengthen his personal security. Over the following weeks, new serious terrorist attacks took place as well, which caused tens of deaths and injuries between civilians and the forces. Now, these are not isolated and show the depth of the crisis in Colombia. The so-called total peace has failed completely. Armed groups have reorganized once again, and the drug terrorism groups have re-strengthened their power. Cocaine production has hit record levels. The role of the Soares cartel, which is also involved elements from the Venezuelan government as well, are destabilizing, including in Colombia. And that's why a clear message has to come from Europe, speaking out against the political polarization from Petro and speaking out against those who murdered Uribe, protection of candidates with an eye to the elections in 2026, and support for every effort to break down the criminal networks, starting by moving into putting the Soles clans onto the terrorist links so that we could put an end to their financial networks and sanction their political representatives. Thank you.
Orlando, din partea grupului.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Leoluca Orlando.
Signor Presidente.
President, High Representative, in Colombia, the peace process, which was concluded in 2016, is in serious crisis through the violent action of these armed groups who don't agree with the peace process and who have opened an ongoing armed conflict for control of the whole of Colombia, involving drugs trafficking and organized crime on a transnational level. Like the different Italian mafias, Camorra and 'Ndrangheta, Cosa Nostra, this is what's happening in Colombia with involvement from Venezuela as well. This led to the murder of Miguel Uribe Turbay, the opposition candidate who died after 2 months of suffering, and still thousands of citizens who are afraid are leaving the country. There are attacks, and political representatives such as the Federico Gutierrez, the mayor of Medellin. I remember because I was there then in 2019. He blew up and destroyed the monk who was a symbol of Escobar's criminal work. The next elections are parliamentary elections in March 2026, and the presidential ones in June of 2026 are a crucial watershed for democracy and law in Colombia. I have sent a letter to the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, and I wrote also to the President of the Parliament, Roberta Metsola. Thank you for paying attention to this, calling for the European institutions to pay great attention in respecting the democratic rights in a country which is so important in Latin America, linked through many agreements with the European Union. And now we are seeing we have to stand up against political crime and organized crime, which could undermine those forthcoming elections. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole. Urmează Anthony Smith.
Now, Mr. Smith for the left group.
Président, commissaire.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, over the past few months, Colombia has faced various terrorist attacks linked to drugs trafficking as well. We condemn those attacks. We stand shoulder to shoulder with the families of the victims and give them our full support. And we give our full support also to President Petro and his government as they fight the drug traffickers. We welcome the implementation of a total peace process based on respect of human rights and the need to address the deep-lying roots of crime, poverty and social exclusion first and foremost. One of the use of by the extreme right of politics for their purposes, that we have to put an end to that. They're trying to undermine what was achieved in 2016, the agreement there. The opposition has to fight to ensure that the recommendations of the UN Secretary General linked to the peace agreement are implemented. And we call on the EU to act to ensure that that agreement is fully applied. The Colombian people must be protected against the predatory and mafia practices so that they can live in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stier.
Los violentos nuevamente aterrorizan Colombia y amenazan la estabilidad regional.
We are seeing threats to regional stability, democracy, and the very sovereignty of Colombia. Terrorist groups and drug clans have made it plain that the total peace strategy laid down by the government, alas, has not yielded fruit. What's more, it was construed by these groups as a carte blanche to go ahead. The terrible terrorist attacks against the security forces and civilians and the assassination of Senator Uribe are clear signs of the proliferation and spreading of terrorism and organized crime. And this is working across borders. We must avoid a greater escalation of violence in Colombia, provide our support and cooperation. It's also important for political and social players and stakeholders, particularly the authorities, avoid polarization and inflammatory speeches. Clearly, the EU must place on its list of terrorist organizations the Gulf Clan and the dissident factions of FARC and the Soles cartel.
Yes. Urmează domnul doamna Leire Pahin.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pahin.
Thank you, President, High Representative. I would like to express my firm condemnation of what recently happened in Colombia. I would like to convey our solidarity to the victims and the families. Since the 2016 peace agreement, the various governments in Colombia have done their utmost to roll these agreements out. And this is also the case of Petro Uribe. He wanted absolute peace. The EU has clearly shown leadership here. We've provided firm political support and ongoing funding. There is still a lot to do. There's a long path ahead of us. We have our backs to the wall. We have our work cut out for us. We are facing a proliferation of criminal groups. Therefore, more support must be given to Colombia. Therefore, electoral ends should not undermine what has been built so far. Let's have no more polarization in this House. Colombia needs greater support, not less support for dialogue, more support to create economic opportunities, more support for the participation of local governments, activists and civil society and women. And it goes without saying, Colombia needs more support generally because this is a strategic partner of the EU and we have a clear responsibility to bear. We must continue to help Colombia in this very difficult process.
Urmează domnul Sebastian Kraus.
Gracias, Presidente. El brutal asesinato.
Thank you, President. The brutal murder of Senator Miguel Uribe Turbay really should draw our attention because it takes us back to the darkest parts of Colombia's recent history. Murders, kidnaps, fear. Cali, Medellin, Bogota, all of the regions throughout the country, the people who live there deserve to live peacefully in security. The upcoming elections are a clear opportunity to change course. The time has come to reaffirm a commitment to peace and justice. We still have time to take a different path. We don't want to follow the example of Venezuela. We want to free Colombia. Colombia can rise again. The future of the nation will be in the hands of its people. Thank you and long live Colombia.
Gracias, Nu am observat semnul făcut de domnul vorbitor, dar...
Thank you very much. I couldn't see what the speaker had in his hand, but we'll check. Mr. Bilan is next.
Come a long way since it was terrorized by drug cartels for decades. Today, its citizens fear these dark times have returned. Terrorism is present once again on a large scale. The recent terrorist attacks on civilians and the assassination on Senator Turbay are not only isolated tragedies, they are attacks on democracy. It demonstrates the complete failure of President Petro's so-called total peace policy, which has only created space for armed groups and cartels to expand their power and spread violence. I call on the European Union to support Colombia in countering the influence of terrorism and the cartel de los soles. We should stand firmly with the Colombian people by imposing stronger sanctions against trafficking networks. We must defend Colombia's democratic institutions. Colombia's future belongs to peace. It will never belong to terrorists nor cartels. Thank you.
Thank you. Urmează domnul Milan Mon.
Now, Mr. Myanmar.
Thank you, President. Security in Colombia, well, there's been a sharp increase in violence in recent months. Senator Uribe recently passed away after the June the 7th attack. In August, there were serious attacks in Cali and Antioquia. Armed and illegal groups are increasing their power in the country. They have links to transnational drug dealing groups. They are a major threat for the security and stability of Colombia and surrounding countries. After the peace process, Colombia should not backpedal. There is extreme violence out there. The authorities must crack down on this wave of violence, guaranteeing the security of all citizens and electoral candidates, ensuring that the state is present throughout the country. As far as the EU is concerned, we must continue to provide support, since Colombia is a key partner. We'll be voting on a resolution, and the resolution mentions that the terrorist group list we have should include the groups. We must avoid polarization in Colombia. I fear that in this country, as in others in Latin America, what the people are getting are visionaries rather than efficient and honest managers. Carlos Granis put it pithily. Alas, the kind of problems we have in Latin America recently have been extending their tentacles into Europe.
Yes. Urmează Arkadiusz Mularczyk.
Mr. Mularczyk.
Dramatycznej sytuacji, w której...
Thank you very much. Today we're talking about a dramatic situation, a country that's been terrorized by drug trafficking cartels, and the symbolism of the assassination of Miguel Uribe Turbay, who wanted to become head of this country. That assassination just shows how long the arm is of these criminal organizations in Latin America. This is something that spreads its tentacles out elsewhere, even as far as to us, because the Soles cartels and others are starting to make themselves known here. They're working with China, with Iran, with all those countries hostile to democracy. The budgets of these cartels are tantamount to a massive threat against our societies. The Polish secret services managed to arrest and imprison the leader of various traffickers, and we're talking about thousands of millions of dollars worth of business they're carrying out, and we're seeing collaboration that has to be carried out with the US, and we have to have the Soles cartel included on the list of terrorist organizations. Thank you very much, Mr. Lopatka.
Horrible terrorist attacks in Colombia must be condemned in the strongest possible terms. These acts of violence not only claim innocent lives, but also represent an attack on our shared values. And here we have to support the government of Colombia in its fight against terrorism. As Vice Chair of the Eurolat Committee on Political Affairs, Security and Human Rights, I always stress in our exchanges with politicians from Latin America that on the one hand, democratic principles, and on the other hand, our fight against extremism and against terrorism must be in the center of our political dialogue and our work we are doing together. So Colombia is a key partner for the European Union, and we have to do more than only to work on a trade agreement which we renewed in 2024. Colombia is a partner, a strategic partner for development, prosperity, and also in the fight against crime and organized terrorism.
Thank you. Și urmează Alma Escura.
Thank you very much. Ms. Escura Almanza now.
Gracias.
Thank you, President, High Representative. What Pablo Escobar dreamed of one day has been implemented by Maduro. He seized the state of Colombia. He controls a loyal army. He has a foothold in our capitals, and he's president in the UN. He's a narco, is Escobar, but he has the power of a state behind him, and he is using terror to bring his people to the knees. Many people are complicit, including Rodriguez Zapatero. What's happening in Colombia and Venezuela aren't domestic matters. These are a global threat. Therefore, the People's Party wants to ask for two things in this chamber. Firstly, we Europeans should declare the Solis cartel as a terrorist organization. This is only the first step towards punchier and braver actions, because the world and Europe cannot turn a blind eye to what's happening to the people in Venezuela and Colombia. If you vote against, you are complicit.
Muchísimas gracias. We do not have catch the eye, so I invite you, Madam Vice President, High Representative, to wrap up the debate.
Thank you, honourable members, for this debate. Once again, I also want to thank you for your continued attention to the situation in Colombia. And I think we are sharing the same views, so that is very clear. As Colombians confront difficult security challenges and enter a delicate electoral period, the people should know that they can count on the European Union as a reliable and strong and credible partner. We have a busy agenda with Colombia in the coming months. We will have the CELAC-EU summit in November. We will negotiate a new bilateral partnership and cooperation agreement. We will hold ministerial-level dialogues on human rights and fight against illicit drugs. One of these contact points is an opportunity to reflect the priorities and sensitivities that emerge from today's debate. So European Union will continue to convey our concern for the escalating violence in the country, reaffirm our support to Colombia in the fight against crime and pursuit of peace, and explore ways to further strengthen bilateral cooperation for the benefit for our citizens as well as their citizens on the other side of the Atlantic. So thank you again for this very good debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. With this, we conclude the debate.